Hi, everyone. Brian Valerio, VP with Alliance Advisors. I'm here today with Tom Ball, a Senior Vice President, also with Alliance Advisors. And we're back today with another Corp Gov Alert. This time, we want to talk about the Nasdaq board diversity proposal that was recently approved by the SEC. We've done a couple of interviews, Tom and I, talking about this topic already, as it has gone through a couple of different iterations or changes since it was first introduced in December. So Tom, why don't we start there? Can you walk us through kind of what the timeline looked like for this proposal and where we currently stand?
Yeah, sure, Brian. Well, so we've been at this for a number of months. This started in December 2020. Nasdaq made its initial proposal to the SEC for permission to adopt new listing requirements regarding diversity. And then in February 26, 2021, Nasdaq filed an amendment with the SEC, primarily allowing some more flexibility in the rules and make some technical changes. And these changes, the amendments, were made in response to over 200 comment letters received by the SEC. And Nasdaq said most of those comment letters, and I read a number of them, were complimentary, were supportive of the rule. So that gets us to where we are now, which is August. In early August 6th, the SEC approved the proposed changes. So now they're in place and approved by the SEC.
Which is kind of the timeline we had talked about during the last time we did a video. We thought around this time, around August, late summer or so, was when we would see the ultimate SEC approval. So things more or less have seemed to progress as predicted. So let's talk a little bit about the rule. Let's give everybody a bit of a refresher as to what the rule entails. So the biggest component of the rule is that it is going to require Nasdaq-listed companies to disclose or explain why they do not disclose two diverse directors. And the two diverse directors need to fall in two different categories. One has to be a woman and one has to be a member of an underrepresented group. Could you talk a little bit more, maybe provide some more nuance on some of the rules and what it entails?
Sure. Yeah. Again, you're spot on in terms of what the rules require. I think the important thing here, and Nasdaq has noted this in their releases, that the board diversity rule is not a mandate, it's not a quota, it's a comply or explain. So if you don't comply, you just need to explain. So again, not a mandate, not a quota. There's flexibility there. In addition to the board diversity rule, there's also a new requirement, a disclosure requirement, which is the board diversity matrix. And what that is each company, each Nasdaq listed company would be required to disclose annually board level diversity data in a format known as the board diversity matrix. And I don't know if you can pull that up to show everybody what that
Yeah,
looks
let me
like.
share my screen. So we've got a couple of samples that were provided with it.
So you see that they're not naming names here. It's just a list of the various categories and how many directors fit within each category. So again, no name disclosure.
And they give you a couple of different ways that you could go about doing it. So there's a couple of different styles that companies can look at if they're trying to determine what's the best way for them to do it, given their specific tastes and suits and what works best for them.
And they're also, this is on the Nasdaq website. If you go to the FAQ, they also have examples of companies who had disclosure last year and what it looked like. Of course, Nasdaq is included in there, and you've got other companies as well. So here as you see. Yep. So that is what we've seen so far, and it matches what Nasdaq has promoted as the way to go here.
Well, I think that's a super helpful tool for companies, and it's a nice addition to this that Nasdaq went ahead and provided some samples and examples for these companies.
Right. Yeah, and Nasdaq, in doing this, they said, quote unquote, that they wanted to make sure there was consistent and comparable statistics widely available to investors regarding the number of diverse directors serving on Nasdaq listed boards. So it's a good tool, makes things easy. Another service, in effect, that comes under the rules is Nasdaq is offering a board recruiting service. And this service would allow companies for 1 year to have complimentary access to a variety of board recruiting services, including Equilar, Athena Alliance, and Board List. And those services are available to companies who haven't met the diversity objectives and need some assistance in doing it. And NASDAQ points out these are complimentary, number one, and they're also not mandatory. So you don't have to, the company doesn't have to use the services. They're just there to help in the event that they need.
The other big takeaway is kind of the timing on when this has to be implemented. Can you walk us through those rules? It looks to me like it's about 2 years from essentially today when these companies will first be required to explain or disclose. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, sure. There's a lot of flexibility here built into the rules. The first that kicks in is the board diversity matrix. That would need to be in companies' proxy statements no later than August 8th, 2022. So you've got a year. Either that date, or if they file their proxy after August 8th, that would be the date it would have to be in there. So either August 8th or the date in which you file your proxy material in 2022. For the board diversity requirements on composition, it really depends on which tier you are in NASDAQ where you trade. First of all, for all companies would be expected to have at least one diverse director by August 2023. So 2 years, plenty of time. If companies listed on Nasdaq Global Select or Nasdaq Global Market, you're expected to have 2 diverse directors within 4 years by August 6, 2025. And for companies on the Nasdaq Capital Market, you have 5 years. You have until August 6th, 2026 to have 2 diverse directors on the board. So again, lots of flexibility in there.
And I guess the last component that we should discuss is what happens if companies fail to comply with this rule. So there was discussion about failure to comply potentially leading to delisting when this rule was first introduced. Can you walk us through what some of those consequences for failure to comply with this rule would entail?
Sure. A company, if a company has not complied, they'd be notified of the deficiency and they'd have to cure that by the date of their next annual meeting or 180 days from the date of the event that caused the deficiency. So you have time to comply and make the changes that you need. If you don't regain compliance within the cure period, NASDAQ would issue a staff delisting determination letter. But again, it's important to note that that doesn't mean you're going to be delisted. If you don't comply, you just need to explain why you haven't complied. So you may be subject to delisting, but you can overcome that by explaining why you haven't met the goals. So again,
and so one of the interesting things that is still out there is what's going to happen when companies provide an explanation for why they're not complying with this rule. Are there going to be ramifications from other shareholders or other stakeholders around their stated rationale for failing to comply? I think that's something that we'll probably want to see how that unfolds over the next few proxy seasons as it's getting more implemented and more part of the regular cadence of companies' annual disclosure and part of their regular reports.
Right. I think what we look for there is, what are ISS and Glass Lewis going to do when they talk about what they're doing next season, the season after that? That will be an indication of what's coming down the road later on. So something to look out for sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much for back on. Always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah.
I think this might be the last of the series of the discussions on the NASDAQ board diversity proposal, at least for the time being, until the next amendment to it is made.
It sounds good. Okay, thanks.
All right, bye.